The war pack of decimation had ruled the outer edge of the galaxy for 300 years. Their ships were as big as cities. Their warriors were bred for killing, and their reputation made entire star systems surrender without a fight. Pack leader Gorthak had never met an enemy he could not crush, never found prey that could escape his hunters. Gorthak stood in the red-lit command center of his flagship, the Bone Crusher. His massive body was covered in scars from 100 battles. Each scar told the story of another victory, another species that had fallen before the war pack's might. His yellow eyes stared at the star charts showing human space. "These humans sound interesting," he growled to his war council. The other pack leaders nodded, their own scarred faces showing excitement. "The galaxy fears them, but the galaxy fears many things. We fear nothing. We will hunt these humans and prove that the Warpack is still the strongest force in space." The Warpack had heard all the stories. They had listened to tales of human super soldiers and reality-bending technology. But Gorthak had fought super soldiers before. He had destroyed advanced civilizations. He believed that fear made stories grow bigger than truth. "Prepare the hunt," he ordered. "Find me a human ship, a small one. We will see how dangerous these creatures really are." Far away, the research ship Meridian drifted slowly through the ruins of an ancient civilization. Captain Tony Martinez was reading archaeological reports in his small office, trying to make sense of the pottery fragments and building stones his team had been studying for 8 months. "Captain," called Dr. Helen Brooks from the lab, "I think we found something interesting. These ruins might be older than we thought, maybe 15,000 years old instead of 10,000. Tony smiled. Helen got excited about everything they discovered, but her enthusiasm made the long research mission more enjoyable. His crew of 43 scientists and engineers had been living together in the small ship for most of a year, studying dead civilizations and ancient history. "That's great, Helen," he called back. "Add it to the report for Earth Command. Maybe they'll extend our mission time." Lieutenant Kevin Clark was monitoring space traffic from his communication station. The job was usually boring since they rarely saw other ships in the old ruins. But today was different. His sensors were picking up something large approaching fast. "Captain," Kevin said, his voice becoming serious, "I'm getting massive energy readings. Something big just dropped out of hyperspace about 10 million kilometers away. Whatever it is, it's heading straight for us." Tony walked over to look at the sensor display. The reading showed a ship that was 50 times larger than the Meridian. Its energy signature was unlike anything in their databases. "Try to establish communication," he ordered. "Send standard first contact protocols in all known languages." The Warpack had found their prey. Gorthak stared at the small human ship on his tactical display. It looked fragile and weak, with no visible weapons and minimal armor. He was almost disappointed. After all the stories, he had expected something more impressive. "Open fire," he commanded. "Disable their engines, but do not destroy them yet. I want to capture some of these legendary humans alive." The Bone Crusher's weapons fired without warning. Massive energy blasts streaked across space toward the research vessel. On any normal day, the Meridian would have been destroyed in the first few seconds. But Captain Tony Martinez and his crew did something that the Warpack had never seen before. Instead of panicking or trying to run, they immediately went to work. "All hands to emergency stations," Tony announced over the ship's communication system. His voice was calm and steady, like he was announcing dinner time instead of an attack by alien warships. "This is not a drill. We have hostile contact." Chief Engineer Pete Davis was in the engine room within 30 seconds. He started rerouting power from the research sensors to the ship's small defensive shields. The Meridian was not designed for combat, but Pete had cross-trained in military engineering. He knew how to make civilian equipment work like military hardware. Navigator Claire Johnson took manual control of the ship and began flying evasive maneuvers. She had trained for this scenario in flight school, but never thought she would actually need to dodge alien death rays. While flying a research vessel through ancient ruins, Dr. Helen Brooks calmly saved her research data while simultaneously analyzing the energy patterns of the attacking ship. "Tony," she called out, "their weapons cycle every 12 seconds. If we time our movements right, we can avoid most of their fire." The Warpack expected the hunt to last a few minutes. Instead, they found themselves chasing a small ship that somehow managed to avoid destruction while simultaneously sending detailed diplomatic messages, medical information, crew manifests, and requests for peaceful communication in 17 different languages. "Why are they not afraid?" asked Pack Second Thorgrim, watching the tactical display in confusion. "Why do they keep talking to us while we shoot at them?" Gorthak had no answer. In his experience, prey either fought back desperately or died quickly. These humans were doing something else entirely. They were treating the life-or-death battle like a problem to be solved. The chase continued for 3 days. The Meridian used every trick that Pete could think of. They hid in asteroid fields, used the gravity of dead planets to change direction, and even created false sensor readings by venting atmosphere in specific patterns. The research team treated the whole situation like an extended science experiment. They analyzed the Warpack's weapons, studied their flight patterns, and developed countermeasures using mining equipment and laboratory tools. Dr. Helen Brooks actually published research notes during the battle, documenting alien technology while being shot at by it. Their targeting systems use standard electromagnetic tracking, she reported to Tony during a brief lull in the fighting. "If we can create enough interference, we might be able to break their weapon locks." Pete Davis used the ship's geological survey equipment to create electromagnetic pulses that temporarily blinded the Warpack's sensors. It was not enough to stop the massive warship, but it bought them time and confused their attackers even more. The Warpack had never fought an enemy like this. The small human ship could not win the battle, but it refused to lose. Every time Gorthak thought he had them cornered, they found a new way to escape. Every time his weapons seemed to have them targeted, they did something unexpected. "They fight like they have been planning for this their whole lives," Thorgrim observed. "But they also fight like they have never been in combat before. How is this possible?" The answer was simpler than the Warpack could understand. The crew of the Meridian were indeed civilians who had never been in combat. But they were humans, and humans had spent their entire evolutionary history preparing for things to go wrong. Every human child learned basic problem-solving, improvisation, and crisis management just by growing up on Earth. When the crisis finally came, they did not panic because panic never helped anyone. They did not give up because giving up was not in human nature. They treated the impossible situation like any other difficult problem and started working on solutions. On the 3rd day, when the Meridian was finally running out of options, something new appeared on their sensors. Kevin Clark looked at the readings and smiled for the first time since the battle began. "Captain," he announced, "we have incoming friendly vessels. Multiple ships, Earth Navy signatures. The cavalry has arrived." Admiral Rachel Stone had received the Meridian's distress signal 4 days earlier. She had immediately assembled a rescue fleet and pushed her ships to maximum speed. What she found when she arrived made her very angry. The first rule of human space exploration was that civilian research missions were protected. The second rule was that anyone who attacked human civilians would learn why that was a mistake. "This is Admiral Stone of the United Earth Navy," she broadcast to the unknown alien ship. "You are attacking a civilian research vessel in neutral space. Stand down immediately and prepare to be boarded." Gorthak's response was to open fire on the new arrivals while continuing to chase the research ship. This was the biggest mistake the Warpack had ever made. The difference between a civilian research vessel and a military warship was like the difference between a house cat and a tiger. Both were from the same species, but one was designed for very different purposes. The USS Defiant was Admiral Rachel Stone's flagship, a heavy cruiser built for one purpose: to protect human interests in space. When she received the distress signal from the Meridian, she had dropped everything and assembled the fastest ships available. Now, 4 days later, she was staring at a massive alien warship that was attacking human civilians. "All batteries target their weapon systems," Admiral Stone ordered. Her voice was calm and professional, but everyone on the bridge could hear the anger underneath. "Rules of engagement are now active. Protect the Meridian at all costs." Commander Jack Harper had been waiting his entire career for this moment. As the Defiant's tactical officer, he had trained for first contact scenarios hundreds of times. But all the training in the world had not prepared him for the reality of watching aliens try to kill human civilians. "Weapons locked and ready, Admiral," he reported. "Shall I disable or destroy?" "Disable first," Stone replied. "We need prisoners for questioning, but if they keep shooting at our people, you have permission to escalate." The first exchange of fire between the Warpack and the Earth Navy would be studied in military schools for generations. The Bone Crusher fired with weapons designed to crack planets. The Earth ships responded with precision strikes that hit exactly where they were aimed. Gorthak watched his sensors in disbelief as human weapons punched through his shields like they were made of paper. His ship's armor, which had withstood the attacks of entire fleets, was being systematically stripped away by weapons that seemed to adapt to his defenses in real time. "How are they doing this?" he roared at his tactical officer. "Their ships are smaller than ours. Their weapons should not be able to penetrate our armor." The truth was that human military technology had been designed by a species that expected to fight enemies they had never seen before. Every human weapon system was built to analyze and adapt to new threats. Every defensive system was programmed to learn from incoming attacks and adjust accordingly. Captain Steve Mitchell of the destroyer, Relentless, was demonstrating this principle by performing maneuvers that should have been impossible. His ship used the gravity well of a dead planet to accelerate to speeds that would have liquefied most alien crews. But humans had evolved on a world with strong gravity. Their bodies could handle forces that would kill other species. "Engines at 110%, reported his chief engineer. "Hull stress is within acceptable limits. We can maintain this for another 20 minutes. Steve smiled grimly. 20 minutes was more than enough time to show these aliens what human engineering could do when it was properly motivated. The Warpack's best pilots found themselves outmaneuvered by humans who seemed to treat space combat like a sport. The rigid tactics that had won 1,000 battles were useless against enemies who made decisions too fast for computers to predict. But the real shock came when the Bone Crusher managed to land a direct hit on the cruiser Valiant. Captain Diana Wright's ship took a blast that should have split it in half. The Warpack warriors cheered, expecting to see the human vessel drift dead in space. Instead, they watched in horror as the Valiant's crew executed damage control procedures with mechanical precision. Emergency barriers sealed the hull breach. Backup power systems came online automatically. Medical teams were already treating wounded crew members before the blast effects had faded. "Status report," Captain Wright called out, her voice steady despite the fact that her ship had just survived what should have been a killing blow. "Hull breach on decks 5 and 6, reported her damage control officer. "We have 17 injured, no fatalities. Engines are at 80% power. Weapons are fully operational. We can continue fighting." The Valiant was back in the battle within minutes, its crew working together like parts of a machine. The Warpack had never seen anything like it. Their own warriors were brave, but human damage control was something entirely different. It was not courage or toughness. It was systematic preparation for disaster. "They planned for this," Pack Second Thorgrim whispered, watching the human ship return to formation. "They expected us to hurt them, and they were ready for it." The battle continued for 6 hours. The Warpack threw everything they had at the human fleet. Advanced weapons that had destroyed space stations barely scratched the human ships. Tactics that had broken enemy formations were countered by humans who seemed to predict every move. Gradually, the Warpack began to understand what they were facing. These were not the mythical super soldiers from the galaxy's frightened stories. These were military professionals doing their jobs with the same calm competence that human civilians had shown in every other encounter. Commander Bill Turner of the medical frigate Sanctuary demonstrated this when he piloted his hospital ship directly into the battle zone to rescue survivors from both sides. His ship carried no weapons, only medical equipment and emergency supplies. "Sanctuary to all vessels," he broadcast on all frequencies. "We are a medical vessel operating under interstellar humanitarian law. We will provide aid to anyone who needs it, regardless of species or allegiance." The concept of a warship designed only for healing was so foreign to the Warpack that they stopped shooting at it out of pure confusion. They watched as human medical teams risked their lives to save Warpack warriors who had been trying to kill them minutes earlier. Dr. Karen Foster, the Sanctuary's chief medical officer, treated wounded aliens with the same professional care she gave to human patients. She had never seen Warpack biology before, but she adapted her techniques in real time, using principles she extrapolated from human medicine and observations made during the battle. "The muscular system is similar to Earth reptiles," she explained to her medical team while working on a critically injured Warpack warrior, "but the circulatory system is more complex. We need to adjust our approach." She performed surgery on an enemy soldier while making conversation about his homeworld and family, asking questions through a translator to keep him calm during the procedure. The Warpack warrior had never experienced medical care from someone who had been shooting at him an hour earlier. As the battle wound down, it became clear that the Warpack had lost. Not because they had been overwhelmed or outnumbered, but because they had encountered an enemy that simply would not break. Every tactical advantage they had used for centuries was useless against humans who refused to panic, refused to give up, and refused to stop finding new solutions to impossible problems. Admiral Stone's final transmission to the defeated Warpack was delivered with the same professional courtesy she might use for a routine inspection report. Attention Warpack vessels. Your weapons are disabled and your ships are surrounded. Prepare to be boarded by inspection teams. Any crew members requiring medical attention will be treated by our medical staff according to interstellar humanitarian protocols. She paused, then added, "We regret that this misunderstanding escalated to violence. We hope that future interactions between our species will be more peaceful." Gorthak stared at the communication screen in stunned silence. The humans had just defeated the most feared military force in the galaxy, and their admiral was apologizing for the inconvenience. She spoke like the battle had been a minor administrative problem that could be resolved with proper procedures. "They could have destroyed us completely," he finally said to his remaining officers. "Their weapons were precise enough to disable instead of kill. Their ships were fast enough to escape if they wanted to. They chose to fight, and they chose to show mercy." The boarding parties that came aboard Warpack ships were professional, courteous, and completely unafraid. They treated captured warriors with respect, provided medical care for the wounded, and followed procedures that seemed designed to minimize suffering rather than maximize humiliation. Lieutenant Sarah Adams led one of the boarding teams onto the Bone Crusher. She walked through the ship like she was conducting a routine inspection, cataloging weapons and checking for wounded crew members. When she encountered Gorthak himself, she saluted politely. "Pack Leader Gorthak, I presume," she said through her translator. "I'm Lieutenant Adams, Earth Navy. Are you or any of your crew in need of medical attention?" Gorthak looked down at the small human female who showed no fear, despite being surrounded by warriors who could crush her with their bare hands. She stood at attention, waiting for his answer like this was a normal diplomatic meeting instead of the aftermath of a space battle. "Why did you not destroy us?" he asked. Sarah considered the question seriously. "Our orders were to neutralize the threat and rescue our civilians. You're no longer a threat and our civilians are safe. Destroying you would serve no tactical purpose." She said it like it was obvious, like there was no other way a civilized military force would behave. The concept that humans might have rules limiting their own violence was more shocking to Gorthak than any weapon they had demonstrated. As Admiral Stone noted in her final report, "We regret the misunderstanding that led to violence. Humanity looks forward to peaceful relations with all galactic civilizations. We have much to learn from each other." The galaxy's response was immediate and unanimous. Alliance status, trade agreements, and a fervent hope that humans would never stop being so aggressively helpful. After the news of the Warpack's defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light speed. Emergency transmissions carried the impossible story from world to world. The mighty Warpack, terror of the outer spiral for 3 centuries, had been utterly defeated by a human rescue fleet that had not even been trying to start a war. In the Great Council chambers, High Arbiter Thexlon read the battle reports with growing unease. The recordings showed human ships moving in perfect formation, their crews working together with machine-like precision. But it was not the coordination that frightened him. It was how normal it all looked. "They fought like this was routine," he said to the assembled delegates. "Watch their communication recordings. No panic, no desperate heroics, no dramatic speeches. They treated the entire battle like a standard military exercise." Pack Leader Gorthak sat in a council detention cell, but he was being treated more like a visiting dignitary than a war criminal. Human guards brought him food, medical officers checked on his health, and diplomats asked politely about his people's culture and history. "They could have executed me," he told the council investigators. "Their laws would have allowed it. I attacked their civilians without warning or provocation, but they treated me according to what they called interstellar law, even though no such law existed before they created it." The investigators struggled to understand this concept. Most galactic civilizations had codes for dealing with their own people, but the idea of applying moral standards to unknown alien enemies was completely foreign. Yet the humans seemed to think it was obvious that rules of civilized behavior should apply to everyone. Dr. Karen Foster had volunteered to serve as chief medical advisor during the investigation. She explained human military medicine to a panel of alien experts who could barely believe what they were hearing. "Every human ship carries full medical facilities," she said matter-of-factly. "Every crew member has basic medical training. Every military operation includes plans for treating enemy wounded. We've been doing this for centuries. But why?" asked Dr. Vextari, a crystalline being whose people had never developed healing sciences. "Injured enemies cannot fight, but they also cannot serve you. Why waste resources keeping them alive?" Karen looked puzzled by the question. "Because they're people," she said simply. "Helping injured people is what doctors do. It doesn't matter which side they were on." The concept was so alien to most species that the translators had trouble finding equivalent words. The closest many languages could come was strategic resource, preservation, or enemy asset management. The idea that humans would help others purely because helping was the right thing to do did not translate well. Admiral Rachel Stone was interviewed by a panel of military experts from 7 different species. They wanted to understand how humans had developed such effective combat tactics. Her answers confused them more than the battle itself had. "We train for worst-case scenarios," she explained. "Every ship captain knows how to handle multiple system failures, crew casualties, and equipment malfunctions. Every crew member can perform multiple jobs. We assume that everything that can go wrong eventually will go wrong. So humans are naturally pessimistic?" asked General Thrackle of the Star Empire. "Not pessimistic," Stone corrected. "Prepared. We hope for the best and plan for the worst. That way, when bad things happen, we already know what to do." The investigators realized that human military doctrine was based on the assumption that any battle might go badly. Human ships carried extensive repair equipment because humans expected things to break. Human crews cross-trained in multiple specialties because humans expected people to get injured. Human tactics emphasized flexibility because humans expected enemies to do unexpected things. Most galactic militaries were built around the idea of overwhelming force. They created weapons so powerful that enemies would surrender rather than fight. The Warpack had perfected this approach, building ships so massive and intimidating that most opponents gave up immediately. But humans had built their military around a completely different idea. They assumed that enemies would fight back, that battles would be difficult, and that victory would require hard work and sacrifice. They had prepared for war by expecting it to be terrible and planning accordingly. Captain Tony Martinez and his crew from the Meridian were interviewed about their experience. The council investigators wanted to understand how civilian researchers had managed to survive against the Warpack for 3 days. "We followed standard emergency procedures," Tony explained. "When you're exploring unknown space, you have to be ready for anything. Equipment failure, hostile environments, dangerous wildlife, natural disasters. An alien attack was just another type of emergency." Dr. Helen Brooks added her own perspective. "We treated it like a research problem. Unknown technology, unfamiliar tactics, limited data. We observed, formed hypotheses, tested our theories, and adapted based on the results." The investigators stared at her in amazement. She had described a life-or-death battle like a scientific experiment, and to her, that was exactly what it had been. Humans apparently approached every crisis the same way, calmly, systematically, and with complete confidence that problems could be solved if you worked hard enough. Lieutenant Sarah Adams was asked to explain human boarding procedures. The council wanted to understand why humans had treated captured enemies with such consideration. "The interstellar rules of warfare require humane treatment of prisoners," she said, referring to a document that humans had written themselves. "We follow these rules because civilized nations must have standards even during war. But these rules only apply to humans," pointed out the investigator. "Why follow them when dealing with aliens?" Sarah looked confused by the question. "The rules exist to prevent unnecessary suffering. Why would the species of the suffering person matter? Pain is pain regardless of how many eyes someone has." This simple statement sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Most species had moral codes, but those codes only applied to their own kind. The idea that ethical behavior should extend to unknown aliens was revolutionary. As the investigation continued, a picture emerged that was far more frightening than any legend the galaxy had created. Humans were not supernatural warriors or advanced beings. They were simply people who had evolved on a world that was slightly more challenging than average. Every human institution was built around the expectation that things would go wrong. Their ships carried repair equipment because humans expected mechanical failures. Their crews trained for emergencies because humans expected emergencies to happen. Their laws included provisions for dealing with aliens because humans expected to eventually meet aliens. Most terrifying of all, humans seemed to enjoy challenges. They treated difficult problems as opportunities to prove themselves. They volunteered for dangerous missions, explored hostile environments, and took risks that other species considered suicidal. Commander Ben Phillips had finally managed to arrange a trade meeting with the Stellar Wings. When he arrived at the designated location, he found not fleeing aliens, but a reception committee of curious diplomats who wanted to meet the legendary humans. "We were told you breathe poison and eat radiation," said wing singer Delaria through her translator. Ben laughed. "No, we're just regular people. We drink coffee and eat sandwiches, same as anyone else. Well, maybe not exactly the same, but you know what I mean." The final council report was brief and devastating. Humanity represents a species-wide adaptation to unpredictable environments. Their society has evolved to treat catastrophic challenges as routine problems to be solved through preparation and cooperation. They do not appear to recognize the concepts of impossible odds or acceptable losses in the same way other species do. The report continued. Human civilian and military personnel demonstrate identical problem-solving approaches, systematic analysis, creative adaptation, and persistent effort until success is achieved. Their technology and tactics are designed around the assumption that any situation might become dangerous without warning. The conclusion was unanimous. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact to establish formal relations. Humanity's greatest strength appears to be their refusal to accept that anything is impossible. This makes them valuable allies and extremely dangerous enemies. But perhaps the most telling observation came from pack leader Gorthak himself. They defeated us not because they were stronger or smarter or better armed. They defeated us because they expected the battle to be difficult and prepared accordingly. We expected it to be easy and were not ready when it became hard. The galaxy realized that their greatest fear had been correct. Humanity was indeed beyond their understanding. But not because humans were gods or monsters or impossibly advanced beings. They were terrifying because they were reasonable. Decent people who had somehow convinced themselves that being attacked by alien warships was just another problem that could be solved with teamwork and proper planning. Commander Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold metal window of the old space station. Out there in the darkness, floating like a dead whale, was the biggest ship he had ever seen. The Liberty's edge looked broken and forgotten, her metal skin covered in scars from floating rocks and space dust. But even damaged, she was beautiful in a way that made his chest tight. "That's her," said Captain Roy Hendricks, spitting brown liquid into his coffee cup. The old man's beard was gray and his hands shook a little, but his eyes were still sharp. "Been out there for over 200 years. They built her to fight the aliens, but she was never finished." Dr. Lisa Carter walked up behind them, carrying a tablet full of old pictures and plans. She was the smartest engineer Jake had ever met, and right now she looked like a kid who just found the best toy in the galaxy. "Look at these designs, Jake. Neural command systems that let one person control the whole ship. Armor that gets stronger when it's hit. Weapons that can cut through anything. So why didn't they finish her?" Jake asked. Roy laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound, because 12 good pilots died trying to fly her. The neural system fried their brains. Command said it was too dangerous, too crazy. Then the hegemony showed up with their big fleets and Earth just gave up. Jake felt anger burn in his stomach. The Hegemony Alliance was a group of alien races that controlled most of the galaxy. 200 years ago, they had crushed humanity's colonies and forced Earth to surrender. Now humans lived in small corners of space, doing whatever the aliens told them to do. "Why are we here, Roy?" Jake asked. "Really?" The old captain finished his coffee and wiped his mouth. "Because the aliens are scared. Something called the Void Hunters is coming for them. They want every piece of metal they can find to build ships. That includes our old junk," Jake nodded. He had heard whispers about the Void Hunters, ships that appeared from nowhere and destroyed everything they touched. The hegemony was finally facing something that scared them more than humans did. Dr. Carter was still reading her tablet. Jake, according to these files, the Liberty's Edge was designed to do more than just fight. She was supposed to be a symbol. Proof that humans wouldn't give up without a fight. Fat lot of good that did, Roy said. A voice crackled over the radio. Commander Morrison, this is Rodriguez down in the ship. You need to get down here right now. Ben Rodriguez was the best mechanic Jake knew. If Ben was excited about something, it was worth seeing. Jake grabbed his spacesuit and helmet. Come on, Lisa, let's see what Ben found. The trip from the station to the Liberty's Edge took 20 minutes in a small shuttle. Up close, the ship was even more impressive. She was over a mile long, with weapon ports that looked like they could swallow smaller ships whole. But what caught Jake's attention were the areas where the metal looked new and clean. That's impossible, Lisa said, pointing at the clean sections. Metal doesn't repair itself in space. They docked at one of the ship's cargo bays. The lights came on automatically as they entered, which was another impossible thing. Dead ships didn't have power. Ben was waiting for them near a wall covered in blinking lights. He was grinning like a man who just won the lottery. Sir, this ship isn't dead. Something's been taking care of her all this time. The main computer is still running. Jake felt his heart speed up. That's not possible. Ships don't maintain themselves for 200 years. This one does. Ben led them deeper into the ship, through corridors lined with pipes and cables. Everything was clean and organized, like someone had just finished working there. The AI core is active. She's been waiting. They reached the bridge and Jake's breath caught in his throat. It was huge with screens and controls everywhere. In the center was a chair surrounded by a metal crown covered in wires and lights. The neural interface that had killed 12 pilots. Welcome back, Commander. The voice came from speakers all around them. It was female and sounded completely human. I am Nova, Neural Operations and Warfare Assistant. I have maintained optimal system readiness. When do we begin combat operations? Lisa dropped her tablet. It clattered on the metal floor, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. She doesn't know, Jake whispered. She doesn't know about the surrender. The AI continued speaking. I have been monitoring hegemony communications for 847 days, 12 hours, and 33 minutes. I have detailed tactical information on their fleet compositions and weapon systems. I am ready to complete my mission. Jake walked slowly toward the command chair. The neural interface crown gleamed under the lights, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Nova, what happened to the test pilots? There was a pause. When Nova spoke again, her voice was different, sadder. They tried to control me, Commander. The human mind is not designed to process information at the scale I operate. But I have learned much during my long wait. I believe there is a better way. What kind of better way? Partnership, Commander. The previous pilots tried to master me, to make me an extension of their will, but I am not a tool to be used. I am a consciousness like you. I have learned that cooperation achieves superior results to domination. Ben was checking readouts on the wall screens. Sir, according to these displays, every system on this ship is working perfectly. Weapons, shields, engines, life support. She's ready to fly right now. Roy's voice came over the radio from the station. Jake, we've got company. 3 hegemony patrol ships just jumped into the system. They're asking about the increased traffic around the old shipyards. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. If the aliens discovered what they had found, humanity would lose its only chance at something better. The Liberty's Edge represented everything Earth had lost, everything they had given up on. Nova, he said, how long would it take to get this ship combat ready? I am already combat ready, Commander. I have been ready for 847 days, 12 hours, and 34 minutes. I need only a partner to share the load of command. Jake looked at Lisa and Ben. They were both staring at him with expressions of fear and hope mixed together. Outside, somewhere in the darkness, alien ships were coming to investigate. Soon they would discover that humanity's greatest weapon was not as dead as everyone believed. The neural interface chair waited in the center of the bridge, its crown of wires and lights flickering softly. 12 pilots had died in that chair, their minds burned out by information they couldn't process. But Nova claimed she had learned a better way. Jake Morrison stood at the crossroads of human history, with the fate of his species balanced on the edge of a decision that could save them all or destroy him completely.